Hello, and today we'll be bringing you a special video report series following a request by some of you who have asked us to do a kind of snapshot of who's who in watchmaking, but not in terms of people, but in terms of brand and in particular groups. Who are the players, which brand belong to which group, and what evolution can we expect in the near future. This will give you a big picture of the industry by pinpointing some noticeable differences in terms of organization and strategies between these groups. There are almost 100 brands and around 10 groups that I think deserve some kind of attention. So we could be in for a very long video series, but let's focus on the most prominent groups. And again, this is not a documentary, but a brief outline of the main characteristic of each group. So let's start with the main power luxury groups in this industry, and we'll first honor the Swatch Group, because without it, watchmaking as we know it today would not be the same. We'll then talk about Richemont and ultimately talk about LVMH, the world's biggest luxury group, and Kering, another very important French player. So why start with the Swatch Group? Well, first of all, we owe a lot to the vision of the founder of the Swatch Group, Nicolas Hayek Sr., to have still believed in the appeal of mechanical watches at a time when the industry was faced with the devastating quartz watch tsunami. One has to come back briefly on this crisis because in the mid-70s till the mid-80s, mechanical watchmaking had taken a serious toll, and this on an international level, meaning not only Swiss brands but also brands in countries such as France, the UK, Germany, Italy, where watchmaking was still an industry, but then it kind of all disappeared, and currently only the Germans seems to get it right. But coming back to that troubled era for watchmakers, brand owners didn't know what to do, and many sacrificed their industrial and craftsmanship capabilities by naturally laying off people massively, but also by passing their production tool by profit and loss. Serious machines were scrapped for raw material value, know-how disappeared, and the rise of the precise quartz watch was seen as the thing. And please remember that at this time watches still had a very functional reason of being. We didn't have any mobile phones and computers to give us the time 200 times per day, so the practicality of the quartz watch compared to the less accurate mechanical watch was indisputable. But of course it lacked the magic and poetry that we love today in mechanical watchmaking. So Mr. Hayek, who came from a more scientific background, saw things more with an industrial perspective, and one can say that the notion of marketing through the brands came second. Well, despite the fact that he knew too well that ultimately you need to sell watches, and many. So we can seriously say that he came in as a savior. I know it sounds a bit much, but his pragmatism, his visionary and management skills definitely made a huge difference for the years to come, and he deserves some kind of 15-meter statue somewhere in Switzerland. To make things very short, he basically relaunched the industry with the success of the plastic quartz Swatch, an incredible and fabulously audacious move. The watches were cheap, obviously reliable, and above all, they were cool and have maintained this till today, especially when you consider the automatic System 51, a great watch for its price. Well, with the financial resources and inertia this success triggered, it helped him consolidate his endeavor both on the industrial side with the continuous acquisition of key suppliers, but also on the brand side with some other serious acquisition. All in all, he found himself with a proper industrial tool and brands that gave him more leeway in developing as a whole what was then known as the SMH Group. Coming to the brand side, his vision was very clear from the start, meaning that brands within his group need to coexist and they must all have their own well-defined positioning, and that's where the marketing comes into play. He segmented his brands in clear pricing segments with corresponding products, level of finishing, and so forth. And naturally, this clever pyramid could rely on the industrial strength of the group to supply these brands with complementary production means and resources when they were not found directly within the brands themselves. In a certain way, you can make an analogy to the strategy better known in the automotive world and implemented successfully, for instance, by the Volkswagen Group, and that was before the CO2 emission scandal, of course. So you have different brands with distinctive positioning from mid to very high-end segments, Audi, VW, Skoda, Seat, to name a few, but often they share key elements such as the chassis, engine, knobs, lights, and so forth. Brands still express their uniqueness, whether stylistically, on the level of finishing, performance, and naturally with their very own communication fields of expression. This enables the Volkswagen Group to pool the synergies to their maximum and amortize, for instance, the huge R&D costs on different car platforms, but maintaining some kind of clear identity between them. An Audi customer is seeking something different than a Skoda buyer, not to mention, obviously, a Lamborghini customer. Well, anyhow, this is not exactly what happened with the Swatch Group, but you get the general idea. Because if you continue with that car analogy, the Swatch Group continued to supply brands outside of the group with key components, in particular watch movements. And I doubt you would see this with the Volkswagen Group providing their know-how and the margins directly to their competition, apart in some specific strategic partnerships. So the Swatch Group decided in the early 2000s to gradually limit the supply of these components to other brands outside of the group, and this naturally triggered some serious reaction, and I'll come back on this in a following video. So today the Swatch Group represents 18 brands, a multitude of suppliers, approximately 30,000 people and 160 various production sites. So yes, it's big and simply the largest watchmaking group in the world. Regarding the brand pyramid I was talking about, you'll find at its top Breguet, an absolute passion for Mr. Hayek, and the Lemania manufacturer that came along with the acquisition. Blancpain, also with its manufacturing arm, formerly known as Frédéric Piguet. Harry Winston, both jewelry and the watches, it's a rather recent acquisition. Jacques Hédreau and its métier d'art expertise. Glashütte Original, the German brand from the Dresden region. Léon Atto, and of course one of the huge players of the industry, Omega. Going down slightly in this pyramid, you will find Longines, also a huge player with well-positioned products, Rado and its ceramic expertise, Union Glashütte, also a German brand, and then mid-level brands such as Tissot, again a huge player, Balmain, Calvin Klein, watches and jewelry, Certina, Mido and Hamilton, and finally Flic Flac, the brand geared towards kids, and most people in Switzerland had a Flic Flac at one moment or another in their childhood. And naturally, the Swatch brand, which celebrated its 30th anniversary not so long ago. So we could go further in the details in the history of each acquisition and the incredible development of some of them, but this gives you a general idea of the full spread of the brands belonging to the group, and hopefully we'll have time to produce videos giving you an insight in the history of each brand, but not only for the Swatch Group. So you see, the Swatch Group is really a powerhouse, and I find it amusing that when the group decided to really pull the industry upwards in terms of clearly positioning it in the luxury industry segment, well, they renamed it in 1998 what was known as the SMH Group to the Swatch Group. Well, I'm sure that some communication consultant would have found a much more luxurious name, but Mr. Hayek paid tribute to the origin of all this by naming it the Swatch Group. So yet another quite bold move by Mr. Hayek. Mr. Hayek unfortunately passed away in 2010 at the age of 82, and he was firmly and passionately at the helm of his group until his very last day. Now his family has taken over, and despite being a listed company, the management style of the group is quite different from other groups, and the entrepreneurial dimension is still very strong. For instance, during the last crisis of 2008-2009, most groups and brands restructured their organization and again fired quite a lot of people, which was not the case at the Swatch Group, and in today's turmoil the watchmaking industry is facing, this is still not the case. No one there wants to relive the trauma of the 70s crisis, where big chunks of know-how was simply lost and took years to rebuild. Another example of this entrepreneurial dimension, I quickly talked about it before, but I think it took a lot of courage to come up with the Swatch System 51 introduced in 2013. As this watch is fully made in Switzerland, required huge investment to put the production facility together, and proved that you can make pretty cheap but quality watches in Switzerland when everybody else was focusing on super high-end products. So yet another bold statement, I think. So the Swatch Group also possesses its own distribution and retailing network, but that's another story and for another report. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for your time, and see you soon for our next video report dedicated to the power group of the industry.